What you just saw unboxed was this, the Fifine Ampligame AM8. And I've just been testing it for the past couple of days. We've got a couple of tests coming up comparing it to a new microphone. But overall, this is a budget microphone for people who want to start out in content creation or need something new for gaming. I would say if this came along when I started doing content creation, this is probably the mic I would be going for. Of course, I already have one, and we'll talk about that later. But the Fifine is actually kind of great for its price. This comes in at £60 here in the UK, which for microphones is incredibly cheap and offers a bunch of features, including XLR, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that kind of extends out of the budget range that we have here, so we won't use that as our focus in terms of talking about it in a budget sense, but it does have that option. It has a gain control and a volume control, both in actual physical knobs to turn on the front. It's got a mute switch on the back. It goes by USB-C and has a headphone in, which is always great. And these are all the things that you'd really want from your budget microphone or even your non-budget microphone. Oh, and to top it all off, it has RGB lighting, which at nighttime and especially in the dark looks amazing. First of all, let's talk about ease of use of the Fifine. I've been using it for the past week or so, both on my trusty PlayStation 5, on my PC, and just for general recording. There have been a couple of times in videos in the past couple of days where I've been using this to kind of do pickups and record voiceover again, and I've been quite impressed with it. It has a very isolated sound, and the capsule is front facing, so you've got to point it towards you like this at all times, and it does do a pretty decent job of cancelling out noise, and we'll get into that later on with the tests with keyboards and other sort of things like that. But overall, it is a very easy microphone to use. It has such a good ease of use that it doesn't even have software packaged with it, which a lot of bigger microphones do have. And while you might want that later down the line, for a budget starter microphone, everything you need to control this thing is packed right into it, meaning that no matter if you plug it into your PC or laptop or your PS5, you can control it on the go and get exactly the sound that you want. It's easy enough to set up with a simple USB-C connection that can be used to plug into basically anything that has a USB port, and it's instantly recognized by whatever you plug it into, so I had absolutely no issues there. It comes with its own stand, which I'll show you in use later, but to attach it to a boom arm, it is incredibly simple. It has two thread types, both a wide thread and a smaller thread, meaning that I can have an adapter on here that I use for my other mic, or I can take the adapter off, and both times the Fifine AM8 will fit on it completely fine. Most people though will just use it with the stand, and it's perfectly adequate for that. You can tighten the two bolts on either side or loosen them so you can point the mic in whatever direction you want and keep it there. They did feel a little bit loose. I've tightened them to their full extent and it does feel like it moves fairly easily, but I really haven't had that many problems because I'm not really moving it too much. It does keep its position. It just feels like if I knock it, it will shift around, whereas with other mics, maybe you can tighten these and it won't really move at all. But overall, very impressed with the ease of use of this thing. Next up, let's talk about build quality, because this isn't on the premium end in my opinion in terms of materials for a mic. It feels pretty robust, don't get me wrong, but it does have that plasticky feeling, and it's not very weighty even with the attachment arm that it comes, attached to. But for £60, it feels more premium than it should. My baseline is going off more expensive microphones and they feel weighty and premium, and we'll get onto that in a bit as well. But for the price, this is probably the best feeling microphone I've had. I've handled other mics like this around this price point and they felt absolutely horrible. The Fifine is definitely not in that, tier of quality. But yeah, it's not going to be premium materials, but it doesn't feel like it's going to, combust or fall apart like other microphones do. It will probably last you a while and it feels that way. Same with the inbuilt windshield. That feels decent quality. It does an okay job with handling plosives, but it's just nice that it's included and the build quality is completely fine, in my opinion. Anyway, I think that's covered everything I want to cover right now. We'll talk a little bit more once we get into sound tests. We have two sound tests coming up. One of them is straight into my laptop, just recording the audio raw, and then the other is a microphone and the Fifine plugged into a PS5, because the compression is kind of handled differently there, and PS5 USB mics do struggle sometimes, so we'll have a look how that sounds. But for now, let's get on to the baseline comparisons between this and my current microphone, the Rode NT USB Mini. This is the first test of the Ampligame AM8, but we're testing it on the bass stand it comes with. So if I go and hit the desk, there's probably a fair bit of vibration or noise through that. And then we'll try it on the desk arm compared to my other microphone later on. But for now, this is the sound out of the box through USB, not through XLR, because this is probably the budget option people are going to choose. It's certainly what I'm going to choose, and that's going straight into my MacBook Pro into Final Cut. So that's a straight recorded file. See how this sounds. How do you think this sounds? Do you think this sounds good? Bad? This is a test of my current microphone, the Rode NT USB Mini, and I love this microphone. It's pretty great, but it's around £100, which is £40 more expensive than the Fifine AM8 that I was just testing. I haven't had enough experience with the two mics yet to determine whether or not I like this sound or the other sound more, because I've just got the other microphone. We're doing the sound test now. I'll probably have a verdict by the end of the video on what I prefer. My gut tells me it's going to be the more expensive mic, but from what I've heard so far of the Fifine AM8, it's pretty damn good for the price. Tech is getting better and better. It's been a couple years since this thing came out, so yeah. One thing I have just gone and done with the Rode is take off the pop filter that I added onto it, because I think it should be a fair test. The Rode technically has an inbuilt pop filter. It's okay, it's not great, that's why I have a windshield on top of it. Just to take away the sound of plosives, which are the P's in words. Fifine, the AM8 comes with a pop filter pre-installed. I'm not sure if you can get replacements of those if that one gets damaged, because they're very suited to the Fifine. I don't think other... I mean, you probably could fit a windshield like this onto it, but that's specifically made for the Fifine AM8. So I'm assuming if you got in contact with Fifine, if your one broke or you accidentally ripped it, they'd provide you with another one. But this is your sound test for the Rode NT USB Mini. I personally think this mic is pretty great. It does everything I need to, USB power, but it is missing a few features that the Fifine does have, and that is control of independent volume actually on the device, which the Rode doesn't. It has one dial, and that's to turn up the sound that's being put into your headphones if you have your headphones directly plugged into the mic, so you can monitor audio. While I think that's good, the default setting of how loud the audio is to feed back into your headphones. So essentially, if you don't know how it works, is that if you plug your headphones into a microphone, it feeds back into your own headphones, and you can hear yourself speak. It's like you're not wearing headphones at all, but I turn this option off. I press the middle button and turn it off because the default sound is way too loud, especially if I'm playing on something like a PS5. The sounds of the PS5 get drowned out by my own voice because this is just ridiculously loud at its default setting. Now, you can plug this in and take it to the Rode software and change it, but it goes back to default if you plug it into a device that isn't registered to set it up that way. So I can plug it into my MacBook, tinker with the settings, it'll be fine there, but when I plug it back into my PlayStation, it'll go back to the settings it was at, meaning that my feedback is way too high for me to actually, enjoyably monitor my own voice. So that's the downside of the Rode that I quite like about the Fifine, is that the audio monitoring seems a lot more balanced, and it also, has a couple of knobs to adjust, say, the audio that's being sent into your ears, which this one does have, but it also has the option to adjust the gain on the microphone, which is very nice. One last thing while you're listening to this audio test is that the Rode NT USB Mini, which I currently use, doesn't have a mute button on the actual microphone. I much prefer this to my old mic, which was the Blue Yeti Nano, which did have an actual mute switch on it. The Fifine's mute switch is incredibly nice, and we'll show you that either before or after this. I'm not sure where the sound test is coming, but you'll probably have seen that already, or you're going to see it. This has no mute button. For £100, which is £40 more than the Fifine, it has no inbuilt mute button, which kind of sucks, and it's something that I kind of expect it to have as a mic this expensive. But don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this mic. The sound is kind of up my street with what I like. The audio isolation is pretty decent. You can probably hear some background sounds out the window because I live in a busy city. But yeah, this is your sound test for the Rode NT USB Mini. So now we swapped over to the Fifine AM8, and I'm going to keep the pop filter on for this because it comes with it. The difference is with the Rode, it doesn't come with one. It advertises an inbuilt pop filter, which does work fairly well, but I'm imagining, I haven't actually listened back to it because I'm not live monitoring this one, but I imagine this sounds better with plosives, like what I'm doing now, because it's got an actual windshield. So if I go and take off the windshield and start saying plosive, that's probably deafened you. But yeah, those plosives won't sound good without a windshield. Luckily, it comes with one, so you're absolutely fine on that front. As you listen to this audio test, you can flick back and forth between this and the Rode if you want to hear But we're going to go through some features that I absolutely love about the Fifine AM8. And at the back, we have a mute switch, which is not an actual physical button, so it's quite easy to trigger if you're not meaning to, touch it, if you're grabbing the mic. But if you know where it is, it's probably going to be fine, and you're probably going to notice that you're muted fairly quickly anyway. And we have the feedback monitoring of the headphones, and both of those work very well. They feel fairly robust. It's not quite the quality of the Rode. The Rode is a very chunky feeling mic. It feels premium, but it is £100. That still is in the ballpark of budget, but this is kind of higher end budget for USB microphones, and it feels that way. However, you'll notice the port I showed you earlier, Fifine AM8 does have the XLR port at the bottom, which is going to give you better audio clarity and quality, but you'll need some more equipment to do that with. So if you're on a budget like I am for your content, probably not going to be using that. But out the box with USB, it works completely fine, in my opinion. Works great. One thing I will say is that it feels a lot lighter on the stand. So with the Rode, I can happily position it wherever I want. But with the Fifine, it does feel kind of bouncy with the springs on the stand. I've got to keep them in place. I've got to tighten them very tight just to keep it there. But it doesn't feel cheap. It feels in that middling range. Whereas I think the Rode feels incredibly premium and heavy. This is quite light, but the materials are used feel fairly good. And for 40% less of the money than a mic like the Rode, I'm perfectly happy with this, especially for the actual physical buttons and features and the inclusion of XLR, which is just, it's great. On a budget mic, this, price range, that's awesome. It really is. We're going to wrap up this audio test section straight into a computer, and we're going to get onto a section talking about gaming, because contrary to what some people think, once you plug in a headset like this into a console, it sounds quite different than it does straight into a PC, because there's compression, there's all sorts. So how does it sound on a console? Let's take a look and compare it with the Rode once again. This is on the menu of Rainbow Six Siege. You're hearing the compression that consoles kind of do. It shouldn't be too bad, but it is there, probably. And I'm going to start typing on a keyboard now just to see how that would pick up, because there's no masking of noise by any software. It's just coming straight through the mic. So I'm going to speak over me typing. So there we are. Hopefully this sounds pretty good. It should sound like the plosives are a bit more harsh, but it's a mic that's designed to be a bit closer to your face, and it's very directional. So it probably should give you a bit more of a weighty sound, and I quite like the sound off this thing. This is the Rode NT USB Mini. I'm doing the same test. We're going to start typing on a keyboard behind us. Should be picking up a bit more of the noise of the actual PlayStation, and it should sound a little less directional, like I'm just kind of in the room with you rather than speaking into your ear holes. We're still typing, and we've stopped typing now. There we go. Top left. Left's probably the better way then, like towards southeast, so we can kind of cut down the middle. I haven't done anyone fighting over here though, so if there are any like horses dead or anything, not like these split in half horses, but like the ones that you have to kill, yeah. That would be an issue. Oh, it's gone back to normal, I think. Is it? Doesn't look red anymore. I really need to make a video on Hunt at some point, but I just haven't got around to it. There's a lot of things I want to say about it, and I get distracted. There was somebody there. Double tap R1 to danger ping like that, by the way. I see him. Is he weak to fire, by any chance? That wasn't us.
He's coming.
That wasn't us. I feel like they're on a firefight, some people are inside, and then that guy's outside. I feel like they're on the same level as we are on the other side right now. On fire. One dead. I feel like I am off footsteps. Yeah, coming up the stairs. I've shot him. He's lagged it. That's why I assumed he was going to like sit there and wait for us to get there. He's giving me the runaround, lad. He's in the building. He's in the room with me. I've got him. There are a couple of things at play during this test. One of them is that the Fifine is naturally going to be a lot closer to your face. The Rode is further away when using it on the PS5, because the way that the PS5 software interprets how the mic is kind of transferred into party chat and into your recordings through the console really compresses it and makes the microphone really peak horribly. And I don't get that problem with the Ampligame, but I do get it with the Rode. So the Rode has to be further away, therefore it sounds a bit more hollow and tinny. So I think for the console, I prefer the Fifine overall. But that is kind of due to the circumstances of how the console interprets the mic. But there it is. The Fifine, in my opinion, sounds better, but it is preference after all. So there we have it, the comparison and the review of the Fifine AM8. Overall, I'm really impressed with this thing. For £60, it almost comes to the tier of my current microphone, which is far more expensive at £100. And if you're starting out in content creation and need a microphone that's around this ballpark, I have not found a better option than this. The Fifine is a seriously good bit of kit for the price. And while I do overall prefer the sound of my current mic because it feels a lot more full, this is a very isolated, podcasty type of sound, and I know a lot of people like that. I personally used to make my videos sound a little bit more like this, and that's perfectly good. I feel like I could get away with using this. And even though it doesn't quite reach the heights of my current setup and my current microphone, in my opinion, I do actually prefer the way this sounds when used on PlayStations especially. I feel like it's got a lot more of that podcasty feel and nature, and I do like the way it sounds. I feel like the compression on the PS5, especially across parties, makes this sound better than my current mic. And overall, this microphone does a good job of isolating your voice as well. So thumbs up all around from me on this one. There are a couple of caveats with the build quality not being, up to the standard of £150 mics. That's not really an issue for me, not really a concern. This is £60, and for that price, it's pretty damn great, and I'm absolutely impressed with it. I'm going to continue using this one for the next week or so, I think, and probably use it in terms of my PlayStation most of the time because it is a great option. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Hope you did enjoy. I'll leave a link down in the description to the Fifine AM8 if you want to pick it up. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video.